So thank you everybody for joining us for this opening session. We really appreciate you being here today. It is our third Governors for Schools conference. My name is Hannah Stolten and I'm the CEO here at Governors for Schools. We're hoping it's going to be 2 days of really interesting and informative sessions. Since we were last here in September 22, we've had a really exciting new year for us. We have helped the appointment of over 2,200 volunteers as governors and trustees. And we wanted to start by saying a big thank you to all of those who give their time and energy to school governance. It's really appreciated, not just by us, but the sector as a whole. Your time is really valuable and we do appreciate everything that you do. Our theme for this conference is inclusion, and the majority of the sessions have an inclusion theme running through them, as I'm sure you'll have noticed through looking at the sessions. If you haven't signed up for other conference sessions, please do have a look at our conference programme. It's available on our website at the moment, and we have just opened registration for a networking session at 10:15. So if you've got time for a coffee and a chat at that point, please do register and we'd be delighted to see you there. This morning, we'll be discussing the case for inclusion, and I'm delighted to be welcoming two panellists to join us. Very special people, Beth Bramley and Neil Collins. I say special people because they both support Governors for Schools so much. Beth Bramley is the strategic lead for inclusion at the Institute of Physics. The Institute of Physics is kindly sponsoring our conference this year, so making it free to everybody to access. The Institute of Physics is running the Limitless campaign, which is dedicated to ensuring that all schools are inclusive places for all who attend, making sure that all children have access to the right education. And they will be sharing information about that campaign during this session, how it's relevant to you as school governors and trustees, and how your schools can get the most out of the campaign. We've also got Neil Collins joining us. Neil is the Managing Director of Governor Hub and co-founder in fact. Governor Hub is an organisation which I'm sure many of you will be aware of and really supports the work here that we do at Governors for Schools, not least because they kindly provide all of our volunteers with 12 months free access to Governor Hub knowledge. Neil will be sharing information regarding inclusivity on boards and specifically why including data matters and how governors can leverage this. As I said at the beginning, if you have any questions, please, while the speakers are talking, please do pop them into the Q&A function at the bottom and we'll get to as many as we can. I'll start by handing over to Beth so she can share information from the Governors for Schools, from the Institute of Physics. Thank you. Over to you, Beth.
That's great. Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much, Hannah, for the introduction. And yeah, a big thank you to all at Governors for Schools for what's been a really fruitful partnership and collaboration, but also thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning and to meet with all of you. And well done everyone for the early start as well. Really appreciate everybody getting up and at it for an 8 a.m. start. So yeah, my name's Beth Bramley. I'm Strategic Lead for Inclusion in the Learning and Skills team at the Institute of Physics. And as Hannah mentioned, we're sponsoring this year's conference. So really pleased to have a little bit of time with you all this morning to talk about what Limitless is calling for in education, why, and of course, what your role in that picture is and how you can support. So Limitless was started by the Institute of Physics about 3 years ago now. And at IOP, our work is driven by the really urgent need to address the fact that there's far too many people missing from our community. And we know from research that there are, in particular, 5 groups who are currently underrepresented or underserved in the physics community, and that young people in those groups are both less likely to do physics, but also more likely to face more of a hostile environment when they do. So these groups are, just to give you a rundown, are girls, young people from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, disabled young people, LGBT plus young people, and young people of Black Caribbean descent. And of course, the many, many and varied intersections between those groups. So that's the problem we exist to address, this underrepresentation of those groups in our discipline. But my starting point in talking to you about solutions for this problem is really not to focus on physics. So this is why we're talking about inclusion, and I'm really going to take it outside of physics to a much broader solution and realm. And this is really because our research and the research of many, many, many others in this area is really conclusive to the extent to which young people are affected by the preconceptions, the expectations, the stereotypes, the biases of those around them and those who influence them when they make choices and decisions about their futures. So the IOP launched Limitless to ensure that in every place, in every space where children and young people are exposed to those really limiting attitudes about what might be right for them because of perhaps where they're from or what they look like or who they are, that there's always that counter story working to champion them. Now, unfortunately, we all know that there's no school that's completely and fully immune from the harm that's caused by ills in society, by racism, sexism, classism, ableism, anti-LGBT prejudice, and all of these really get in the way of young people, you know, and they really actually, as one young person said memorably in an interview we did for a video, this make them feel smaller. So our work in education exists to promote inclusion and to dismantle these barriers that are preventing far too many young people from following their chosen paths, or a path which may have just been a perfect fit for their passions and aptitudes. And I'm not just talking about physics in that, surprisingly, as well. So we know that only 1 in 4 post-16 physics students are girls, but under a quarter of post-16 English literature students are boys. So you can see that this is a problem across the board, that this is a school-wide, an education-wide problem. There are other really alarming stats as well. So we know that the disadvantage gap now in education is at its highest point since 2012. And a recent YMCA report said that 95% of young Black people hear racist language or witness racism in schools, which is absolutely alarming. We also know that these issues start incredibly young for young people. So there is a really crucial role for early years providers and primary schools here, as research shows that children are already really significantly affected and impacted by stereotypes from as young as age 7, and they start to believe that certain pathways or certain futures are just closed off to them and just not for them at all. So these are big problems, huge problems, they're society-wide problems, but what can we do in education in a school setting to start to look at some of these barriers and break them down? So the IOP wants to see all schools take a school-wide approach to assessing the barriers that certain groups of young people face, and to do that by developing whole school equity plans. So we have handily got an animation which we've developed, and I'm able to show here today, which explains what we mean by whole school equity plan, the why, the what, and what it means for your role in governance as well. So I will hand over to the Governors for Schools team to play that, if that's okay.
Influenced by too many young people are held back by the biases and prejudices of others when it comes to their education, training and careers. Their choices are influenced by stereotypes about gender, ethnicity and other aspects of identity. School should be where preconceptions are challenged. Too often this isn't the case. The Institute of Physics Limitless campaign is calling for every school in the UK and Ireland to become truly inclusive by taking a whole school approach to equity. This involves the entire school community working together to create a plan to dismantle the barriers students face. It's everyone's responsibility. Having a plan for whole school equity helps schools ensure everything is fair and accessible. It should include everything the school is doing to eliminate discrimination and ensure equal opportunity for all. It means decisions can be tested against it. Is discriminatory language challenged? Is difference welcomed? Do young people feel safe, respected and valued? Is everyone encouraged to challenge their biases? A plan for whole school equity ensures that what's taught and communicated is inclusive, that young people have a voice in how the school is run, and that no one is discouraged from exploring the future that best fits their talents. A whole school approach involves using data and evidence to understand the experiences of all young people. Actions are tracked for impact, and it feeds into existing school improvement cycles. At the Institute of Physics, we believe that every school in the UK and Ireland should take a whole school approach to inclusion and equity. In decades of researching and challenging inequality in education, only where a whole school approach is taken have we seen significantly more students from underrepresented groups progress in physics. Evidence for the effectiveness of a whole school approach is clear, and it's the basis for the Limitless campaign. It reinforces our belief that all young people should be free to choose whatever path is the best fit for their future.
Great, thank you so much for playing that. If I could get my slides back, that would be fab. But hope you enjoyed the animation and that it summarises the concept of whole school equity and planning. And the main thing to say here really is as you heard in there, it's everyone's responsibility in a school setting, from parents, carers, the wider community, led by SLT, all teachers, non-teaching staff as well, careers educators, pastoral team. It really is everyone's responsibility. And of course, you as governors and trustees play such a vital role in that, in setting the vision, the strategic oversight, kind of accountability role, the policy revisions, asking those pertinent questions of the data and prioritising from there. So one other, I haven't yet got my slides back. Is anyone able to view those? It's no worries, I'll carry on. Because one thing I really wanted to highlight is that we also have a new document that we have been developing with colleagues at the National Governance Association as well, which looks at what whole school equity means for you in a governor and trustee role. So that document runs through what does whole school equity look like, what's the role of the board in terms of setting that vision and establishing how to ensure that all young people feel included, safe and achieve well. It runs through looking at policies and kind of those annual cycle of policy revisions, but how to come at that through an equity lens. So looking at things like admissions and attendance, safeguarding, careers, behaviour and exclusion, uniforms, how to build insight and understanding of the current picture in your school, and understand using pupil voice, using experiences from across the board, where the barriers are and what the experiences of certain groups of young people are, what data to look at, how to scrutinise that, work in the curriculum, what professional practice or staff development work might look like, but also crucially how to look for impact and how to track that and make decisions off the back of it. So I hope that, again, that document, which I will share, will be shared in the post conference communications as well, will also be just a really concrete, helpful starting point for starting to think about wherever you are and your school is on an inclusion journey, what further prompts or areas for development there might be. So that's the document there. And just to say that all of the work of Limitless that I've talked through today is hosted at this URL, iop.org/wholeschool. You'll find the animation, the NGA guidance. There are various other posters and flyers which might be really helpful. And of course, all the research and reports that the campaign is founded on as well. So that's everything from me this morning, but I hope you have a really stimulating and invigorating couple of days. The lineup's incredible, so I hope you get loads from it and really enjoy the remainder of the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beth. Really appreciate it. Sorry for the problems with the slides, everybody. We will share the slides afterwards and obviously share the links to the document that the IOP worked on with the NGA so that you'll all have access to it, no problem. Hopefully you haven't missed out there. I'm now going to hand over to Neil as the case for inclusion, specifically regarding governing boards.
Excellent, thanks, Hannah. So now, if the text worked okay, I should be able to move forward and backwards with my slides. Let's hope. Okay, as Hannah mentioned, I'm the Managing Director for Govern Hub. For those of you who don't know, Govern Hub stores governor documents, checks records, etc. And we're used by around about half the schools in the country now. But when we founded Govern Hub back in 2012, there's really one driving aspect to the ethos of the three founders, which was very much at the heart of what we did. Because when we're building a website, you know, you can build a website to do almost anything really, and you can make commercial products with software to do a whole variety of things. But one thing that really brought us together was this feeling that every thriving community has got a good school at the heart of it. And what you can do by investing time, effort, and good practice in schools has a massive effect, not just on the kids that are going through the school, learning stuff and coming out as better citizens, but also enriching that community. And we're really pleased to see that there's a bit more of a spotlight now on schools being at the heart of their communities, particularly as the centre of gravity, to use one of Beth's phrases, it moves towards the multi-academy trusts, which can be much more spread out than historically local authorities have been. So just going to share with you a couple of bits of information we got from some surveys we've done. So as well as providing tools, articles, training and so on, Govern Hub also undertakes quite a few surveys trying to understand what governors are looking for, what schools are looking for. And this particular one was done with our friends at TeacherTapp, and we were asking a question about what are you looking for in a new governor. So this is asking teachers, middle leaders, senior leadership team, and head teachers. We thought this was fascinating. As school staff work more closely with governors, their perception of what they need from those governors in the first place changes quite a bit. So particularly you can see there that head teachers are more aware than classroom teachers about the diversity of the governors coming on. Not much difference, but a significant one difference nonetheless. But the thing which we thought was really fascinating was the perception that you needed some background in education to be a governor. Classroom teachers, more than half, 57%, said, yeah, you need education experience to be a governor. As governors, we know that's not the case, and head teachers reflect that as well. So it's reasonably important, but actual experience of education in the classroom as a teacher or an assistant is not as important as you actually get more involved in governance. What becomes much more important is time, and I think we would then extrapolate that to a passion. You need a passion for your school. You need a passion for making the world a better place for the pupils who are in your school, and we think that's absolutely crucial. Also, a broad experience, bringing those insights, experience, knowledge from the world around you, HR, marketing, technology, safeguarding, etc. So all the things which are really important in schools, and your governing board can bring those through. So we thought that was really interesting. Another survey we did was around looking at a number of the governors that we reached. So we serve about 140,000 governors. So we've really got a massive pool of governors to talk to, and we did a survey. This one was about a year ago, looking at what governors got out of it, what they wanted from the role, and this was amazing. So asking, would you recommend being a governor to other people? 89% said yes, and that was backed up by other questions we asked about what do you get out of it, and also what was the driving factor which made you become a governor in the first place? And the massive, overwhelming majority was making a difference in your community. And it's really interesting that governors get into governing because they want to make a difference in their community. They get something out of it, and they would absolutely recommend it. You can see here, nearly 90% of governors would recommend this to other people. So it's a very positive thing to do, but we need to make sure we're tapping in to all aspects of our communities when we're recruiting governors in the first place. Also, you may have spotted it this April, the Department of Education came out with some more guidance around diversity, and we think this is probably the first step in several here from the department in encouraging schools, multi-academy trusts, local authorities to better track the diversity of their governing boards. And also, we think increasingly that you will, as governors and the schools and multi-academy trusts, be asked to report on this, probably on your website. But what the guidance said very specifically, diversity is important, and we want governing boards to be increasingly reflective of the communities they serve. And this is the first time the department really has touched on this topic. And we know from discussions with the department, this is something they've wanted to do for some time. And interestingly, one of the things that's really held them back is any useful way to measure this information. So we have submissions to get information about schools for all governor information, but it's never actually got to, it doesn't include ethnicity, it doesn't include information about some of the underrepresented aspects of governing boards, which interestingly tally almost exactly, I would say, with the underrepresented physicists that Beth was talking about earlier. So, you know, all the groups which we know are underrepresented in these aspects of education. And we've known for a long time. I think if you go back to an NGA survey from, I think it was 2005, 2006, it had the same data. The numbers were the same. The underrepresented groups were the same. The percentage of governors that looked like me, you know, white, middle class, middle-aged males, was predominant. And that's the thing we as a sector have really got to focus on and change if we want to make sure the boards who set the strategy, as Beth was saying, are representative of the communities that represent that the school is at the heart of. So what are we doing about it? So at Govern Hub, as I was saying, we have 140,000 governors, 16,000 schools. So what we're doing is providing a mechanism to track this. So you can track it now at an individual level, and you can now, so this is the diversity, so aspects of your ethnicity, gender, sexuality, education, those sort of things, which tend to be underrepresented across boards. And we're allowing a way to track that. But more importantly, to be able to then report on it at a school level, a MAT level, and a local authority level. And maybe in the future, actually, as we get more data, we're looking to potentially report on this at a national level. this data obviously got to be treated quite sensitively, and particularly when we're reporting this, it's reported in an anonymous way. So we say, okay, 10% of your governors are male, that sort of thing. But what we won't do is identify individuals. But that's there now, and it's all launched. We launched it in July, and we've already got, I think, 7,000 governors have completed their diversity information, which as a percentage is still quite small, but it's been the summer holidays and we've only just launched it and we haven't really given it a big push. But we are now going to be making it more visible on the site. And even that small percentage of the users, 7,000, is actually the largest ever data sample of this diversity information for governors in the country. So we think this will increase, and we're hoping that the vast majority now of governors and trustees using Govern Hub will start to fill in this information, and then we can report on it. And hopefully by reporting on it, we can start to move that dial and make boards more inclusive, more representative of the communities which serve their schools. And that's what we're hoping. So yeah, that's what we're doing. That's why we're hopefully providing that data, working with partners like Governors for Schools to make sure that when you're looking for new governors, you're looking at the broad pool of talent which represents your community and not just an echo chamber of friends and colleagues. And on that note, Hannah, can I hand back to you? Thank you very much.
You can. Thank you very much, Neil. Could you just clarify where people input that data, just so that people are aware?
Yeah, so in Govern Hub, you've got your profile area. So if you click on your name at the top of the screen, it opens up a window, and that's where you fill in things like your name, your contact details, and so on. And there's now a new panel in there, which is only visible to you. None of the other admins in the system can see it. It's just available to you, and that's where you fill it in. But obviously, there's also the choice of I don't want to say, and that's perfectly okay as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much. We have got quite a few questions coming through, which is great to see. The first question from Neil was, does the governing board report on the diversity of the governing body? I think Neil's covered some aspects of that, either as part of the school or elsewhere. So Neil, do you think that the governing board should be putting this on their website? What should we be doing with this data once we have it?
Yeah, so there's been some fairly ambiguous guidance from the department here, but they basically say schools need to report on the diversity of their boards. I think that's actually about as detailed as they've got. So how you do that, exactly what diversity means, they've not necessarily clarified. I suspect what was in their mind was particularly ethnicity. So reporting on that, and I suspect also what was in their mind is reporting on the website. But that's up for schools to interpret. But just because that's what the department's asking for today doesn't mean that in the future this isn't going to become more of a reporting requirement, and that's the way we suspect it's going to go. So it's the need to report on this information is going to increase.
Lovely, thank you. There's a question from G. Peatling regarding EHCP arrangements. There's been lots about EHCPs in the news recently. Existing EHCP arrangements mean that governing bodies who are more conscientious about aspects of inclusion, especially SEND, I guess, may leave their schools with a financial burden. Why has government not acknowledged this problem, I guess, and is there anything that we should be doing to try and highlight that as an issue? Beth, did you have anything? Did you want to talk about that aspect? I know you mentioned disabled or otherwise able, and in your initial conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it has to be a choice at school level, really, doesn't it? I mean, I acknowledge the problem, but fundamentally, I know that all of you will be in this role to ensure that young people who do have different needs are still able to thrive, and the school does everything that they can for them. So I don't have a problem to the bigger a solution to the bigger issue there, and in terms of squeezed school budgets, etc. Does anyone else have anything to throw into that? But I think the question's coming from the right place. Schools are there to be conscientious about meeting the needs of all learners.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, sorry, if I can just chip in on that. I think there's a lot of things you can do as a governor or as a trustee and as a board to game the system. So particularly, making sure you bring in pupils with higher prior attainment will make your league table results. Well, what a marvelous thing to do, but how representative is that of your community? You are not doing your community any favors by skewing things that way. So yes, absolutely fight the financial battles and the funding issues with government and others, but please don't use it as a way to be less inclusive, particularly of your pupils, and particularly the ones mentioned in the question here, who are the most vulnerable that we serve. So yeah, absolutely, do the right thing.
Absolutely. Got quite a couple of questions around disability. Is disability tracked on the Governor Hub questions, Neil?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Excellent. And one of the areas we've struggled to recruit from is governors who have a disability. They've asked whether Governor Hub can help bridge that gap.
Yeah, we do a number of things there. So particularly, obviously, it's a website, visual impairment. So it's something that is very much behind the scenes, but we do quite a lot with the interface to ensure that it's compatible with screen readers. We also do things like if you've got a document which is on Governor Hub, you can have it read to you. So it's an immersive reader which will actually play that through to you. And the same is the case for the articles in Governor Hub Knowledge. So the articles that give guidance and getting that, they're screen reader compatible. So those sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the main thing we've done.
Lovely. And I would say that over 7.5% of the volunteers that we had come forward last year were did tell us that they had a disability. So we can try and help there as well to try and broaden the reach. Let's have a look. We've got quite a few questions. Your slides showed who you asked regarding teachers, etc. Did you ask chairs as well for their views, or was it just school stuff? I know it was through Teacher Tap, wasn't it?
Yeah, sorry, you dropped out a little bit on the question.
Oh, sorry.
Was the question that who do you ask? Who did you ask?
Yeah, did you ask chairs or governors, I guess?
This was Teacher Tap is for those not familiar with it, it's an excellent app, but it's used by teachers. So it's particularly to get an insight in what teachers view of a variety of things. So curriculum through to more tangential topics such as governance. So that's how we. So no, those particular questions were only asked to teachers, SLT head teachers. Our survey, though, the other one, which was talking about governors and their experiences, was just governors and trustees. So that was Governor Hub users.
Lovely, thank you. Question from George to drive to limit the use of acronyms. Sorry if we've used some this morning. I know we said EHCPs, that's Education, Health and Care Plans. So for children with special educational needs or disabilities. Not sure whether we've used any others I'm aware of. I think we're okay. Okay, we will try not to. I do agree, it can be very confusing, and especially for a new governor, very daunting, I think, with all the number of acronyms across the education sector. One of the questions that we had previously was around having a link governor who might be a link governor for inclusion. Have you seen that in practice? Do you think that's a good idea?
Okay, well, to chip in there, I think the major step you take in terms of inclusion for your board is when you are recruiting new governors, and that can be through a link role, but I think more it's about making sure as a whole board you're reviewing your practice for getting governors. I've been a governor for a couple of decades now, and it was certainly previously common practice that governors should use their contacts to find other governors. That's actually something that we say don't do that now, and so there's one aspect that you can definitely check for your board. If that's what you're doing, don't do that. Go and use organisations like Governors for School, who have a much broader reach. The reason you shouldn't do that is because you would just end up with an echo chamber. You just recruit people that you know, and they tend to be from a similar background to you. So look for that diverse range. So now I suspect the best approach here is to look as a whole board at how you bring in new governors, how you induct them, how you set expectations, how you make sure you're reaching all aspects of your community to pull in new governors. That would be my suggestion.
Can I dive in here as well? So, I mean, in terms of the whole school equity approach and planning for whole school equity, and, you know, assessing those barriers that different learners and different groups of young people are facing, it is really vital that that's on the agenda at governing board, trustee board meetings. I know that some boards have found it incredibly useful to have a named, in the same way that you'd have, say, a link governor or a safeguarding lead, etc., have somebody with that inclusion and an equity agenda as kind of part of their remit. That's really helpful because it ensures that somebody has oversight of that and is kind of leading on that agenda and making sure that it's kind of it's taken forward and actions are tracked. And however, there is always this tension with any kind of inclusion and diversity work, that it then just sits on one person's shoulders. And I completely acknowledge that then it becomes, you know, oh, well, they've got this. Now, that's the danger. And I think what I'd advocate for is that there is somebody, so that the importance of this role is really protected, the importance of this agenda is protected, the work, but that everybody's incredibly conscious of that. Let's not make sure that it's kind of siphoned off over there. So here we're talking about very broadly the whole school approach, not just board diversity, but the experiences of young people and those patterns of achievement and progression that, you know, that we need to do something about.
Yeah, okay, so classic. So question regarding collecting that diversity data. How do we keep it anonymized where boards are very small? I think there are lots of boards out there who are struggling to recruit. Although we try and help in every way we can, we know it is a challenge. Where you maybe do have a board that's not at 12, how do we support with that?
So we only report on, so we never name individuals, but the other thing is we only report on data at the point that it can be suitably anonymized. So if you've only got 2 respondents, one male, one female, and the male is the report says they're gay, then we don't report on that, because, you know, you could then, from one set of data, you can identify another. So it's only at the point that you've got a sufficient number of responses that we report on it, so you can't identify individuals. Oh, actually, can I also, sorry, I'm looking at the questions here, and can I just pick up on one point about neurodivergence, because this is something very close to my heart, because I'm a trustee at a specialist school for autism kids, and that's also something actually we do some work on. So one of your attendees has flagged up that the articles in Government Hub are well set out and they find them easy to access. And that's actually a very important point. And I'm really glad we've got that comment, because that's something we do focus on. So around people's different ways they access information, and particularly how you access websites. So the things like colour contrasts, spacing, the way it's set out, but also the language we use. You don't find acronyms in our articles, for the other point that was made previously, because that is actually very off-putting to people who don't have an education background. So don't use acronyms. That's a good point. So inclusion, although we may have a particular idea of what that is, when we're making sure that we're genuinely being equitable and making sure we bring everyone in, there's a lot of aspects that you need to consider about the barriers that we are unconsciously put up. And there's a couple of good examples there, I'd say.
Brilliant, thank you. Beth, what are the biggest challenges to inclusion, in your opinion, across the school sector that we should be aware of?
Sorry, the biggest barriers to inclusion?
The biggest challenges to inclusion and making sure that our schools are inclusive. What are the biggest challenges that you come across?
I mean, how big the issue is.
Okay.
Is the starting point, you know. I think it can feel quite overwhelming, can't it? You know, kind of thinking, okay, what can I, in this role specifically in this school, do when these are huge societal problems? But I think that's, you know, it is coming back to, okay, I am just in this role. I am one person working with this group, this, you know, with your colleagues on the board. I think as as you would expect from a scientific organisation, it's always turn to the evidence, turn to the data. What's it telling you? What are both the numbers and the national data that comes out? What trends can be seen in there? But crucially, not just that data, listening to young people, making sure that those insights are fed in about what experience of all groups are in education, and breaking down that massive challenge into chunks. So what I'd say, where I've seen really, really exceptional whole school approach and whole school planning happen, is where it is very evidence and data led, problems are identified, responsibility and accountability is set and tracked, and that there are maybe a series of projects to address things that are looked at along the way in terms of impact, but that they all have to, all the projects are not disparate projects, they're all feeding into what is the vision, how is it all part of a whole school approach. So yeah, I'd say the challenge is that it could feel big and overwhelming, but that it's looking at the specifics of your setting, listening to young people and breaking it down into chunks and keeping looking at what's working and what's not.
Thank you. Very, very thorough. Thank you. Lovely. Right, let me have a look through the questions. The question about the Teacher Tap survey, does it show that governors have more to do in ensuring teachers and staff understand what they do?
No, that wasn't, I mean, it's a very valid point, but that's not something that we dug into in the Teacher Tap data. But there's, it's really interesting, I think, as you get a large collective, like you know, in terms of like 140,000 governors, you can really get some good insights here into some of these different aspects of governance and governors. So yeah, maybe that's a topic we'll dig into with other surveys.
Thank you. And a question about LGBT governors. Might they have discrimination if they admit to their sexuality?
Yeah, I saw that question, and it's heartbreaking that that's in 2023, that this is still an issue. I really hope it's not. But it's one of the reasons why we make sure that the reporting of the data is anonymized, because people are, reporting on things about themselves, which they may not, in other circumstances, reveal. So yeah, we're doing that. And as also mentioned, you can always say, no, I'd rather not say. That's perfectly valid as well. I
agree. It's heartbreaking. I remember speaking to a potential governor about 3 or 4 years ago who would have been perfect for the role, and he said he wouldn't take it up because he was gay, and he thought that people would look at it in the wrong way, which, yeah, as you say, in this day and age, you just would hope that would never happen, but clearly it is an area of concern.
Yeah, and I think there perhaps there's a difference between perception and reality. I mean, I've been on many boards over the course of a couple of decades, and I've never seen any sort of homophobia or anything like that. So, maybe it's simply that it tends not to come up, or maybe it is more of an issue that tends to be under the surface and somewhat hidden. But yeah, it'd be a real shame, I think, if that was a barrier for people.
100%. I think we need people who have different life experiences on the board to make sure that all children are understood. Beth, sorry.
It really, I mean, like you said, the fact that people are ruling themselves out of opportunities for, and even if it's a perception in that instance, perceptions come from somewhere, they come from years and years of having comments or that it really just, to me, just reinforces the need to ensure that schools, which is our earliest interactions and the place where so many of our kind of foundational feelings about ourselves and our identity are formed, are really inclusive places to learn and to grow.
Absolutely. Mark asked the question, when it is so difficult to recruit anyone as a governor, what practical advice can the panel provide as to how we can reach out and make the role more appealing to minority communities? And there was also a question from somebody earlier about using the slides to do exactly that, to reach out to new governors. So I'm sure we'd be happy for people to be doing that, to those slides, but are there any other things that you think people can be doing to reach out and make the role more appealing to minority communities?
Well, interestingly, I think one of the things we found in one of our governor surveys was that the interest in becoming a governor was highest in at least two of the least represented sectors, which were young governors and ethnically diverse governors. And that's so actually, I suspect there is a demand there. And if you're not bringing in a diversity of governors that represent your community, then you're probably, it's the mechanisms you're using, I suspect, which are best looked at rather than the desire to become a governor, because I think that's genuinely high and highest amongst those who are currently underrepresented.
Beth, did you want to add anything there?
Nothing really specific from me on that one.
We'd just say then that we definitely find that young people are really interested. Young people is a really easy group to target, I think, because actually they are interested. I think a lot of the problem is that they don't realise that they're eligible to be a governor. They think maybe that you have to be a parent or that you have to be working in education, and that is why we target through companies and universities and other organisations to try and encourage more younger people to join. And in that way, actually, we're increasing on a number of different other metrics as well. So yeah, I definitely think it's go out and find them. Absolutely tap into local community groups. That's a good way of finding people. I reach out to local businesses and see if they have people who might be interested. But I think a lot of it is lack of understanding about the role, rather than that they actually don't want to do it. So that would be my
I guess, Hannah, some of the kind of flexible models that you've instigated in the pandemic in terms of remote governance might support with that time flexibility as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think there's a bit of a problem with hybrid. All I hear is hybrid meetings can be a nightmare, and I completely understand that, having run several hybrid meetings myself. But I think if you can have flexibility, whether some meetings are online and some are in person, absolutely, that can help with that time aspect and make it more available to everybody.
We looked at the data on Government Hub, and across lockdown, attendance at governor meetings went up on average by one person per meeting. So that's probably a combination of people with less other things to do, but particularly think the ability to attend meetings remotely made that much more available to people, particularly around work-life balances and sort of thing.
Absolutely. Right, just going to run through the questions again. So, oh gosh, there's lots. Is there any data on governor retention in this context, and what can we do as governors to make sure we give all new governors great support?
Yeah, so this is one of the things we want to be able to do in the longer term, is triangulate that diversity with retention. Obviously, in terms of how long you keep governors for, then that tends to be a longer thing, and particularly we're now tracking when governors leave mid-term. So if they leave at the end of their 4-year term, then that's one thing. But if they leave midway, particularly if it's early on in their term of office, that implies that something went wrong. And Hannah, you're better to comment here, but that I think tends to be on around induction. Expectations weren't set correctly. They weren't inducted in a positive way. Those sort of things. But
absolutely, and that's why we run monthly webinars to try and engage with people and to really so that they understand the role, because we absolutely think that if you're going into it and you don't fully understand the time commitment, you don't understand what the role is all about, then you're less likely to stay. So that's why we focus our e-learning and resources on that first 6 to 12 months, to make sure that people are up to speed with the role as quickly as possible. There's a couple of questions about what we're doing about reaching out to younger people. We absolutely, that's what we're doing. We're targeting companies and universities to really encourage their employees and staff to take up the role. I think it was 39% of our volunteers were under 35 last year, so a reasonable number younger governors coming into the sector. We know that it's an aging sector, so we're really keen to do that and make sure that we reach younger people, as well as people from all different other backgrounds as well. There's Okay, I think we're on to the final question. What, if anything, can be done in schools to balance encouraging inclusion and representing a school's community if that community is relatively non-diverse? That's a good one to end with, I think.
Yeah, and I think that implies you need to do two things. One is understand the community you're in and what you represent, and that's not always that obvious. But again, we've got some tools on Governor Hub which triangulates the census information with where your school is, so you can sort of get that picture. So I'm here in Norfolk, and that's got a very diverse, a different diversity to say London, where you are, Hannah. I mean, it's so understand the community is the first thing, but also make sure, yeah, you are rooted in your local community. You do represent your local community, and so that should be a conscious decision. So don't just take governors and trustees from those that come forward necessarily. Make sure you're thinking, okay, well, how well does our mix of governors around the table represent the community we're in? So yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Understand the community you're in.
Absolutely. Beth?
I guess an important thing to recognise is that there will always be diversity in a student body, because even if it's a less diverse community in one way, say less ethnically diverse, each young person does come to school with their own passions, etc., their own experiences. There will still be diversity of experience, etc. So I guess that in terms of looking at young people as individuals, that there will always be that, right? But I guess I have spoken to a lot of schools, because this does come up, because obviously we live in different cities, in different geographies, different situations. So it is, of course, always important to remember that we are preparing young people for a future where they may go internationally or elsewhere, and so it is about thinking that in terms of the diverse places they may end up as well. And I guess looking at, as part of that whole school approach, thinking about how does the curriculum represent the experiences of young people across the country and globally as well, and how do we kind of open young people's eyes to other communities, people from other backgrounds, through even things as simple as the displays in school, books in the library, the curriculum content and resources, things like that. So it is about both diversity within the young people, but also that kind of preparation for the future as well.
Thanks, Beth. And I think that's a really key point, that it's maybe when we think of diversity, we may automatically think of visible diversity, or what I think minority people, or what ethnicity people are from, but actually it's all across the whole spectrum. Different people have different experiences, and making sure that all of those voices are around the table. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a couple of minutes just to finish up. To fill you in on a couple of things that are going on. During the conference and to coincide with National Inclusion Week, we will be promoting our new Inclusive Governance campaign, which is focused on increasing the reach of governing boards, and hoping to find new people who can bring their skills and perspectives to the role. So that's really key to what we've been talking about today. Over the coming months, we'll be releasing a range of resources to enrich our recruitment efforts and hopefully help you to recruit as well, and also some learning resources too. If you could please share our content, we'd be really grateful. We want to reach as many new volunteers as we can, so that we can support you to find the right people for your boards. As a brief reminder of our other services, which we have mentioned already today, we can help with finding new governance role for you if you're looking for a second position maybe, or moving between roles, whether that's governor or trustee. We can help with governor recruitment for both maintained and local governing board vacancies. We can help with trustee recruitment, and we have just recently launched our chair recruitment service because we know that's a big challenge for a lot of boards. We also have an online induction e-learning, as Neil mentioned. We really focus on that start of your governance career. So if you need something right at the beginning, then we can support with that. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. We'll be running a networking session, as I mentioned, at 10:15 this morning. So please do register now if you can join us. It will be lovely to see you there. Thanks ever so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.